Hi, this is Craig Stocks here for Utah Desert Remote Observatories. And recently, Quiv the Lazy Geek did a speed run processing demonstration to see how quickly he could go through an image. So I decided I would do the same thing through PixInsight and Photoshop. So the image I'm going to use is this data that I captured last night of the Elephant Trunk Nebula, and it's in the SHO or Hubble color palette. So it was captured with narrowband filters, and it also has RGB stars. So we're actually going to be processing an RGB image and the SHO image, and we'll do all of that in PixInsight. Now I've already run through WBPP, so I have the masters created for this image. And since I'm going to be going through it pretty quickly, I'm not going to be doing much description as I go along. But let me describe what I'm doing to speed up my workflow. First of all, I have the process icons over here. I don't always use all of them, but we'll use quite a few. We'll use channel combination to put the RGB data together. I typically will do a dynamic background extraction to neutralize it somewhat. And then we'll use spectrophotometric color calibration, and we'll use the one here in the middle. The top one is set up for my one-shot color camera. The one in the middle is for narrowband using the ASI 6200. And the third one is set up for doing narrowband or RGB combinations with a FLI 16803, which I'm not currently using. Next I have Blur Exterminator, and you'll see I have three variations of it. One is kind of the default settings. The one in the middle is more aggressive settings to shrink the stars even more. And the third one is what I call fluffy stars. What it does is expand the halo. Sometimes that's useful if you have small stars, or if you want to pull a little bit more color out of the halo. I will only be using the one in the middle for this run through. I do my stretching very simply with the screen transfer function, and I usually tweak it a little bit with the histogram transformation, and use histogram transformation obviously to apply it. Next I have, and this is something different. You're familiar of course with Noise Exterminator and Star Exterminator. I'll be doing two things as I go through that doesn't necessarily speed up the total workflow, but it helps me because it lets me package multiple processes together so that I can go off and do other things, check email, get a cup of coffee, whatever. I'll be pausing the video during those times, but you see I've got a timer down here that'll be running. These are process containers, and what a process container is, if we look at this one for instance, it is a container that contains two processes. It has Noise Exterminator, and then it has Star Exterminator, and specifically it has a version of Star Exterminator where I set it to save the stars using the unscreen stars method. So rather than sitting and running each one of these individually, I can simply run this process container by dragging it onto an image, and then it'll run both of those in series. Now, the other thing I'll be doing is I'll be creating image containers. And an image container is somewhat like a process container, but it will contain multiple images. So for instance, I will put all three of the narrowband images in one image container, and then I can run a process container on an image container, and it will run basically 6 steps for me. It will run a Noise Exterminator and Star Exterminator on each of the narrowband sulfur, hydrogen, and oxygen images. So I say it doesn't really save time. It still takes the same amount of time to process, but I don't have to sit here and every 20 or 30 seconds drag another icon over. I can go away for a couple minutes and it will do its thing. So like I say, I will pause the video during those periods, and then we'll get back and we'll see how quickly I can go through PixInsight. My usual workflow, if you've seen my videos before, I will save 16-bit TIFFs of the images from PixInsight, and then we'll open those as layers in Photoshop, and that's where we'll actually assign the color to the narrowband channels. We'll fine-tune the color balance, and we'll apply the RGB stars on top. So I think that's enough of a preamble to describe what I'm going to be doing. I'll start the timer and then immediately start loading the images from my D drive, which is where I save the kind of the temporary swap files. I will actually save the images as we go through so that it's a true test, even though I've already processed this image once before. Hopefully that doesn't cause me to fumble around looking for the right versions. So with that, let's go ahead and start. I'm going to start the timer, and I'm guessing it'll take 15 minutes or so of real time to process. It will take less time than that to watch it because I'll pause some of the processing time. So let's go. So I've got the red, green, and blue open. I need channel combination to just quickly combine red, green, and blue into a single RGB image. Once those are lined up, click the circle. I can close the process, and I can close the red, green, and blue because we're done with those. We'll take a quick look to see what it looks like. It's probably, yep, it's got a color cast. So I'm going to run dynamic background extraction. And this is one you actually have to double click on because it does some initialization calculations. We can close that. And now I'll run the spectrophotometric color calibration. This process takes about 20 seconds. It actually depends on how many stars are visible in the image. If the more stars there are, the longer it takes. So that's done. Let's update the screen stretch. See what we're working with. That looks nice. I'm going to apply blur exterminator, and I'm using the aggressive settings. And again, this will probably take about 30 seconds to actually run in real time. Okay, that is done. Now we'll stretch the image. And typically, especially if I'm focused on just the stars, I will zoom in and darken it a little bit. Drag the triangle down, apply this. So now we have a stretched nonlinear image. It's ready for noise exterminator and star exterminator. And we're again going to run them both in series. And this version of it will save the stars. The last thing I'll do then is use another saved process that is I've called enhanced stars. That's also a process container. It does two things. It bumps up the saturation, and it also runs a little bit of SCNR to remove any of the green cast that some of the stars might have picked up. So we'll apply that to just the star image. We'll save the stars, close that, and then start on the narrowband data. Okay, so we'll apply the enhanced stars, save this, and I'm going to save this in my back in the same folder with the data that I captured, and I will save this as a 16-bit TIFF, and 16-bit is plenty of image depth because we already have the image stretched. And yes, I do want to close it, and I'm just going to go ahead and close this. Now let's go get the narrowband data. And as I mentioned, I'm going to just go ahead and drop these straight into an image container because as we go through, I'm going to be running a lot of processes on all three of them, and it's easiest to just create an image container. Note that the tool doesn't create it. The tool is to create an image container. So this is our image container, and we can take a peek to see what they look like. I'm just going to charge ahead. We don't need to run dynamic background extraction, so I'm just going to run blur exterminator on all three of those. That'll take about a minute and a half, so we'll pause the video again and we'll pick up as soon as this gets done. Okay, Blur Exterminator is finished, so now it's time to stretch the images. And again, we'll stretch each one uniquely based on its data. And this is just kind of a visual thing. I want to enhance the contrast. I want to make the darks darker, but I don't want to go overboard because I need to have a little bit of room to play. Here's our oxygen data. So we'll bring that up and trying to make the darks dark but not pure black. Apply that. We'll go to the hydrogen. Hydrogen's always fun to leave for last because it's usually the best. We'll boost this up a little bit. Make sure we're keeping some detail in the dark areas. Apply that. And now we can turn off the screen stretch on all three of these. That just confirms that we've got these as nonlinear. Now I need to run Noise Exterminator and Star Exterminator, and I'm going to run a version that does not save the stars. The image container is still valid because the files haven't changed names, so the views are still the same. So what I'm doing now is just running Noise and Star Exterminator one after the other on all three images. And as soon as it's done, we'll save these as 16-bit TIFFs, and we'll be ready to go into Photoshop. And this is probably the last time that I'll pause the video while this runs. Okay, those are finally done. Now we'll save each one of these. I'll just go File, Save As, and navigate to the folder where I want to save it. I'll save it as a TIFF, and this will be a 16-bit TIFF. Save the next one. And the last one. Okay, we are done in PixInsight, so we can go to Photoshop. And the first thing we need to do in Photoshop, if you've seen my videos before, you know we go to Scripts, Load Files into Stack, and this is where we will load all of the files we just created as individual layers so that we can work with them. And so we have to navigate back to the folder where we just saved everything, and fortunately it's already in sorted sequence, so I can click Open and OK, and these 4 files will load. And I think the first thing I'm going to do here is change that background to black, so I have a black reference for my images. I just right-clicked on the background, change it to black, move this out of the way. We need to do a little bit of housekeeping. We'll drop each layer into a group and label it, and this is going to get a levels adjustment and a curves adjustment. We'll use those in a minute. This is the oxygen, and it likewise is going to get a curves and a levels. Got those backwards. And this is sulfur, and it only needs a levels. And lastly, this is our stars. Drop it into a group. It will get a levels and a hue saturation, and we will put this in screen blending mode. And let's just move it up to the top of the stack because that's where it's going to live. And let's start adding some color. Here's our sulfur. Let's rotate this. Image rotation 90 degrees counterclockwise so that it looks correct. So here's our sulfur image. Let's add oxygen on top. Now I'm going to double click here to the right of the layer name, and I'm just going to turn off the red so we have an SOO image. Now we'll start fine tuning. We may increase the brightness a little bit, and let's put this curves in color blending mode and take some of the green out of the, so it's a little bit more blue. And let's go to the hydrogen. It will be in screen blending mode, in which that's always going to make it seem awfully bright. So first we'll use levels to tone it down a little bit. Now we'll go to the curves, and we'll put the curves again in color blending mode. First we want to go to the blue curves and take some of that blue out, which will bring out some of the yellows. And now it just becomes a matter, do we want it to be more orange or more green? I think probably more green looks better. And let's add some global adjustments on top of that hydrogen. So we might want to make the whole thing a little bit snappier. Let's add some saturation. And if we want to play with global color a little bit, we can adjust the color here. And we can turn the stars back on. And there's a pretty finished image in about 14.5 minutes. If we want to adjust the stars a little bit, it's real easy to just come to this levels adjustment. And if I darken that, it just minimizes the stars. Now, as you look at the colors, if you decide you want to fine-tune any of the colors, let's say we want more red, we can come back to the sulfur because that's where the red is coming from. And by boosting the sulfur, we boost the red. So it's that simple. About 15 minutes from a standing start to a pretty finished image in a combination of PixInsight and Photoshop. I hope you found this useful. If you have any questions, be sure to drop them in the comments below, and I'll do my best to try to answer them. I know I went through pretty quickly, but this was about speed. I've got other videos online on YouTube where I go into more detail of what I do in each step and why I do it. So, hope you have a great day today and an even better night tonight under a clear, dark sky. Thanks.